I didn't know my life was about to fracture until I heard him laugh. Not a nervous laugh, not a guilty one, but an easy, careless laugh. The kind a man uses when he believes no one is listening. "She's temporary," my fiancé said. "Once I find better, she'll be gone in a day." I remember how my body reacted before my mind could catch up. My hands went cold. My chest tightened, not from panic, but from something heavier, recognition. I stood frozen in the hallway, my keys still in my hand, my heart slowing instead of racing, like it was protecting itself from fully breaking. "Good to know," I whispered to myself. Out loud, minutes later, I said nothing. Until that week, I believed I had built a solid life. I was 29. I worked hard. I wasn't dramatic, wasn't reckless. I was the woman people described as stable and grounded, and I took pride in that. My name is Alex, and for 3 years, I thought I was building a future with a man named Nathan. We were engaged, 8 months in. We owned a condo together. We adopted a dog together. We talked about children, schedules, careers, a shared future that felt earned, not rushed. I believed permanence was something you nurtured. Nathan believed it was something you tolerated until an upgrade appeared. What I didn't know yet was that those words, temporary, were only the first crack. Because by the next afternoon, his younger sister would text me, her message sharp and urgent, like she was fighting a battle inside herself. "Don't block me. I need to tell you what happened after he said that." My stomach dropped before I even called her back. Within minutes, I would learn that Nathan hadn't just been venting. He hadn't misspoken. He had laughed again when confronted, explaining that love was naive, that I was safe, that I'd make a good mother someday, and that if a richer, more exciting woman came along, he wouldn't feel guilty walking away. And the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was how calmly he said it. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't demand explanations. That night, I cooked dinner. I sat beside him on the couch. I smiled when he talked about wedding venues and future vacations. He thought I was still living in the fantasy he'd designed for me. What he didn't realize was that while he was ranking women in his head, I was already preparing to remove myself from his life entirely, piece by piece, quietly, decisively. I didn't know it yet, but this was the week I stopped being temporary. This was the moment everything began to unravel. Before everything broke, my life looked quiet in a way I had worked hard to earn. I was 29, working in consulting, the kind of job that paid well, but demanded flexibility. My schedule shifted constantly. Some weeks were calm, others swallowed me whole. I liked that rhythm. It made me feel capable, in control. I had built myself into someone dependable, someone who followed through, someone who didn't live in chaos. That was one of the things Nathan said he loved about me. We met 3 years earlier at a mutual friend's birthday dinner. I remember thinking he wasn't my usual type. He was charming in an effortless way, confident without being loud. He asked questions, listened carefully, laughed easily. When he walked me to my car that night, he didn't try to kiss me. He just said, "I'd really like to see you again." I remember thinking that meant something. Our relationship moved steadily, not dramatically. We didn't fight much in the beginning. When we disagreed, Nathan was calm, rational, almost reassuring. He talked about stability, like it was a shared value. He talked about the future early, not in grand romantic speeches, but in practical ones. Neighborhoods he liked, the kind of home he imagined, how important family was to him. I trusted that. A year and a half in, we bought a condo together. It felt like a milestone, not a risk. We sat at the kitchen counter with paperwork spread everywhere, laughing about how grown-up we felt. When we adopted Max, our dog, Nathan took photos like a proud parent, sending them to everyone he knew. "Feels real now," he said. I believed him. The engagement came 8 months later. Nothing flashy, just the two of us at home after dinner. He got down on one knee in the living room, his voice steady, his hands barely shaking. "Will you marry me?" I said yes without hesitation. Looking back, I can see the moments I should have questioned. The way he talked about relationships like transactions sometimes. The way he joked about upgrading jobs, cars, even friendships. The way he liked being admired. Not deeply known, but impressed. But at the time, I told myself everyone has flaws. His family was complicated. His parents were polite to me, kind even, but distant. They spoke highly of Nathan, sometimes too highly, like he could do no wrong. His younger sister, Emma, was different. She was 25, a teacher, soft-spoken but perceptive. From the beginning, she treated me like a real person, not just her brother's fiancée. At family dinners, Emma would catch my eye when Nathan made certain comments, the ones that sounded harmless on the surface but carried something sharp underneath. She once leaned over and whispered, "He's always been like that. Don't let him bulldoze you." I laughed it off then. Planning the wedding should have been exciting. Instead, it often felt like I was fitting myself into a vision Nathan already had. Venues, guest lists, timelines. He spoke with certainty, confidence. I assumed that meant commitment. I didn't notice how rarely he asked what I wanted. I didn't notice how often love was framed as convenience. I didn't notice how safe I made him feel, and how bored he was by that safety. Because from where I stood, we were building something solid, something real, something permanent. I didn't know that while I was planning a marriage, he was quietly keeping his options open. And I definitely didn't know that the man I trusted most had already decided I was replaceable. The shift didn't happen all at once. That's the part people don't talk about enough. Betrayal rarely announces itself loudly in the beginning. It arrives quietly, dressed as small inconveniences, subtle changes in tone, moments you explain away because you love someone and you don't want to be suspicious. Nathan started coming home later than usual, not dramatically late, just late enough that dinner cooled on the stove. When I asked, he always had an answer ready. A client ran long. A networking drink turned into two. A last-minute opportunity he couldn't say no to. "You know how it is," he'd say, kissing my cheek, as if that settled everything. I told myself it was normal. We were adults. We had careers. Life got busy. But then came the phone. Nathan had always been casual with it before. He left it face down on tables, unlocked, unguarded. Slowly, that changed. He started carrying it with him everywhere. Bathroom, shower, even when he stepped outside to take out the trash. Once, I reached for it absent-mindedly to check the time. He snatched it back without thinking. "Oh, sorry," he said quickly. "Work stuff." Something about the way his voice tightened stayed with me. Friends noticed things before I did. At dinners, they'd tease him about being distracted, about texting too much. He laughed it off easily, charming as ever. "Future husband problems," he joked. I smiled along, even though something inside me felt slightly displaced, like I was watching my own relationship from the outside. His family started making comments too. His mother once said, "You're lucky to have him. Men like Nathan don't stay tied down unless everything is just right." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I didn't. Emma did. "What does that even mean?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp. Their mother waved it off. "Oh, he has options." Options. The word lodged itself somewhere deep. The first time I felt real doubt was during a conversation that shouldn't have mattered. We were lying in bed, talking about the future. I mentioned maybe taking a year off after having kids someday. Just a thought, just a possibility. Nathan was quiet for a moment. "Well," he said slowly, "I always pictured someone who'd keep pushing, someone ambitious." I laughed awkwardly. "I am ambitious." "I know," he said. "I just mean, consistently." That night, I stared at the ceiling long after he fell asleep, wondering why something so small hurt so much. Emma started checking in on me more often. Casual texts, quick calls, nothing alarming. But there was an undercurrent, like she was watching something unfold and didn't know when to step in. Once over coffee, she said, "You're really good for him." It didn't sound like a compliment. Then came the comment at a party. Nathan was talking to a group of people I didn't know well. I stood nearby, half listening. Someone asked how married life would suit him. He laughed. "We'll see. I like to keep my options open." Everyone laughed. I didn't. Later, when I brought it up, he rolled his eyes. "It was a joke. You're too sensitive." I apologized. That should have told me everything. By the time I overheard him laughing on FaceTime that Tuesday afternoon, calling me temporary, the truth didn't shock me the way it should have. It confirmed something my body had already known. The seeds had been planted long before the moment everything cracked open. I just hadn't wanted to see them grow. It was a Tuesday. An ordinary Tuesday that should have meant nothing. A client meeting was canceled last minute, and for once, my unpredictable schedule worked in my favor. I got home around 2 in the afternoon, earlier than usual, my mind already shifting toward what I'd make for dinner, whether Max needed a longer walk, how quiet the condo felt in the middle of the day. As soon as I opened the door, I heard voices. Nathan was in the living room, laughing. Not the polite laugh he used with colleagues, not the controlled one he used with my parents. This was his loose laugh, the one that came out after a few drinks, the one that meant he felt completely at ease. I was about to call out to him when I heard my own name. Oh my God, I know, right? He said, his voice light. She's so boring sometimes. I stopped walking. I stood there in the hallway, frozen, my hand still gripping my purse strap, my heartbeat suddenly loud in my ears. Max came running toward me, nails clicking on the floor, tail wagging. I grabbed his collar quickly, crouching down before he could bark or give me away. He looked up at me, confused, tongue out, trusting. I pressed my finger to my lips without thinking. From the living room, Nathan kept talking. Like, she's stable, she's nice, she'll be a great wife on paper, he said. But where's the excitement? Where's the passion? I felt something hollow open in my chest. He paced as he spoke. I could hear it in his voice. Comfortable, unafraid. Honestly, she's temporary, he continued. Once I find better, she'll be gone in a day. I'm just writing this out until something more interesting comes along. There was a pause. The person on the other end of the call said something I couldn't hear. Nathan laughed again. I'm serious, he said. The ring is nice, though, and the condo's in both our names, so at least I'll get something out of it when we split. My vision blurred, not from tears, but from shock. Like my brain was struggling to keep up with what my ears were hearing. 3 years. 3 years of my life reduced to a strategy. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, maybe longer. Time stopped feeling measurable. My body went strangely calm, like it was protecting me from collapsing. Then I did the only thing that made sense. I stepped into the living room. Hey, babe, I said casually. Nathan jumped so hard he nearly dropped his phone. Oh my God, he laughed nervously. You scared me. You're home early. Meeting got canceled, I said. Who are you talking to? He barely hesitated. Just Emma. Girl talk, you know. He smiled at me. That smile I used to believe in. Cool, I said. I'm going to change. I walked into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking so badly I had to press them into my thighs to steady them. I stared at the wall, replaying his words over and over, each time cutting deeper. Temporary, placeholder, convenient. I pulled out my phone and texted the only person I trusted. Hey, can you call me when you get a chance? It's important. Emma replied within minutes. I'm at school right now. Can I call you at 4? Perfect. At 4:15, my phone rang. I was sitting alone in my car in a grocery store parking lot, having told Nathan I needed to run errands. What's going on? Emma asked immediately. I told her everything, word for word, every sentence I'd overheard, every laugh. There was a long silence on the other end. Alex, she said finally, her voice tight. I'm so sorry. I wish I could say I'm surprised. My stomach dropped. But? I asked. Nathan's always been like this, she said. Even in high school, he had this ranking system. He'd date someone while actively looking for an upgrade. I thought he'd changed with you. I really did. I closed my eyes. I'm not going to confront him yet, I said quietly. I need to figure some things out. Do you need somewhere to stay? She asked gently. Not yet, I said, but I might. That night, I acted normal. I made dinner. I sat beside him on the couch. I went to bed next to a man who believed I knew nothing. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, and I started making plans. Shock doesn't always look like chaos. For me, it looked like calm. Too calm. The morning after I overheard him, I woke up before Nathan. I lay there staring at the ceiling, counting his breaths, noticing how peaceful he looked. I wondered how someone could sleep so easily beside a person they were actively planning to discard. When he woke up, he kissed my forehead like always. Morning, Kit, he said. I smiled back. Not because I felt okay, but because I needed time. That entire day, my body moved on autopilot. I answered emails. I sat through meetings. I nodded at conversations. Inside, my thoughts kept circling the same question. How long has this been going on? I didn't explode. I didn't accuse him. Instead, I turned inward, replaying moments I'd brushed aside before. The jokes, the comments, the way he talked about value and options. I asked myself the hardest question of all. What did I ignore because I wanted this to work? That afternoon, I called a lawyer. My voice shook only once when I explained the situation. We weren't married yet, but we owned property together. He told me the truth. It would be complicated, but manageable. He advised me to document everything, to avoid joint financial decisions, to move carefully. So I did. I opened a separate checking account and quietly redirected my portion of shared expenses. I stopped planning, stopped dreaming. Every step I took was deliberate, controlled, invisible. That evening, Nathan came home energized, talking about a work win, a potential promotion, how we should plan a vacation soon. He talked about wedding venues again, about how we're on track. I nodded. I smiled. I listened. Inside, something had already detached. Later that night, my phone buzzed. It was Emma. Don't block me. I need to tell you what happened after he said that. My stomach dropped. I called her immediately. What are you talking about? I asked. She didn't hesitate. I confronted him, she said. This morning, before work. My chest tightened. What did he say? There was a pause. Then she spoke, slowly, carefully, like she didn't want to hurt me, even though the damage was already inevitable. Alex, he laughed. The word hit harder than anything else. He said love is a story people tell themselves, she continued. He said he's with you because you're stable, that you'd be a good mother someday, that you don't ask too many questions. I closed my eyes. And then, she said quietly, he said if someone richer, more exciting, more impressive came along, he wouldn't feel guilty leaving. I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. That's not all, she added. He told me not to tell you, said you're happy living in a fantasy and it would be cruel to ruin it. My hands curled into fists. There's more, Emma said. He mentioned he's been having lunches with a woman he met through work. Nothing official, he said, just keeping his options open. I didn't cry. I thanked her. When I got home that night, Nathan was in a great mood. He talked about our future like it was a guarantee. I watched him carefully, noticing how confident he was in his control of the narrative. That was when I understood something clearly for the first time. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a bad phase. This was who he was. And I wasn't going to beg someone to choose me. I was going to choose myself. Thursday morning, I did something I never thought I would do. Nathan was in the shower. Steam filled the bathroom, the sound of water loud enough to drown out everything else. His laptop sat open on the kitchen counter, exactly where he'd left it the night before. I stood there for a long moment, staring at it, my heart beating steadily instead of wildly. I told myself this wasn't about revenge, it was about clarity. His email was already open. I didn't have to dig far. There were messages between him and a woman named Diana, someone he'd met through work. The language was careful, almost professional on the surface, but underneath it was unmistakable. Compliments, inside jokes, lunch plans, coffee meetings that felt dangerous in the best way. One message from her made my stomach twist. Your fiancé is lucky, for now. Nathan's reply came minutes later. We'll see how long that lasts. Still testing the waters. I took screenshots of everything. My hands didn't shake. I emailed them to myself from an account he didn't know existed. Then I closed the laptop and went to work like nothing had happened. That afternoon, I went back to the lawyer. He told me the truth I already suspected. The messages wouldn't matter much legally since we weren't married, but they could matter socially, emotionally, strategically. Especially if Nathan tried to paint himself as the victim. Document everything, he said again. So I did. By Friday, I started moving my important things out of the condo. Slowly, quietly. A box of documents here, a bag of clothes there. I stored everything at a friend's place across town. He didn't ask questions. He just helped me stack boxes and handed me a bottle of water when he noticed how tense my shoulders were. You okay? He asked. I will be, I said. Saturday morning, Nathan announced he was going to brunch with friends. Girls' brunch, he said casually, grabbing his jacket. Probably be out a while. Have fun, I said, my voice neutral. 10 minutes after he left, my phone buzzed. It was Emma. He's not here, she wrote. I'm at the restaurant he told our mom he'd be at. He's not here. I stared at the screen. I already knew where he was. I'd seen the emails. I'd read the plans. He was meeting Diana. I know, I texted back. It's okay, let it play out. By then, the pressure started coming from all sides. His mother called me that evening, asking vague questions. Was everything okay? Had we argued? Nathan seemed stressed. I kept my answers polite, non-committal. Friends started acting strange, some distant, some overly kind. Word was moving, even before the truth had been spoken aloud. Nathan, meanwhile, was still confident. That night, he talked about vacations again, about weddings, about the life he assumed was still waiting for him. I watched him closely and realized something chilling. He truly believed he could talk his way out of anything. Sunday morning, I woke up before dawn. I made breakfast, pancakes, coffee. The kind of morning that would have once felt loving, intentional. He came into the kitchen in his pajamas, surprised. What's all this? He asked. We need to talk, I said. His posture shifted instantly, cautious now, alert. I set my phone on the table between us. On the screen were screenshots. His words, his plans, his certainty that I was disposable. I heard what you said, I told him calmly. And then your sister told me the rest. And then I found these. His face drained of color, then flushed red. "You went through my email?" he snapped. "You called your fiancée temporary," I replied. "Which violation do you want to start with?" He tried to spin it, tried to minimize, tried to reframe. But for the first time, he had nothing solid to stand on. "I'm moving out," I said. "Most of my things are already gone. My lawyer will contact yours about the condo." That was when the panic hit him. He cried. He begged. He promised change. He said all the words men say when they realize control is slipping. I listened quietly. Then I stood up. "No," I said simply. "You don't love me. You love stability, and I won't be anyone's backup plan." I walked out with Max beside me. And that was the moment the story stopped being about him and started being about what came next. Leaving didn't feel powerful the way people imagine. It felt quiet, heavy, disorienting. The first night in my new place, I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, Max curled up beside me, his head resting on my knee like he was anchoring me to reality. The apartment smelled unfamiliar. Cardboard boxes lined the walls. The silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. That was when the weight finally hit. Not the anger, not even the betrayal. The grief. I grieved the version of my life I had believed in. The woman I was when I trusted him completely. The future I had already lived in my head. I cried for the holidays I'd imagined, the children I'd named silently, the years I thought were secure. And I cried because a part of me still wanted to ask why. The next few days blurred together. Nathan's messages flooded my phone. Apologies, accusations, guilt, rage, promises. I didn't answer a single one. I let my lawyer handle communication. Still, his words seeped in through the cracks of my exhaustion. I stopped sleeping well. I woke up with my heart racing, replaying conversations, wondering how I missed it all. I questioned myself relentlessly. Was I too calm, too predictable, too safe? Friends reached out, unsure of what to say. Some chose sides without knowing the full story. Others avoided me entirely, as if betrayal were contagious. Nathan's mother called again, this time not subtle. "You can't just walk away," she said. "Relationships take work." I almost laughed. Work wasn't the problem, honesty was. Emma checked in every day. Sometimes we didn't even talk about Nathan. She'd ask if I ate, if Max was settling in, if I'd gone outside at all. One night, she said softly, "You didn't deserve any of this." I broke down then, fully, ugly crying. The kind that comes from finally letting go of the responsibility you've been carrying for someone else's behavior. The lowest point came a week later. I was scrolling mindlessly when I saw his social media posts. Vague quotes about betrayal, about heartbreak, about being misunderstood. People commenting with sympathy, believing him. For a moment, something dark whispered to me. Expose everything. Ruin him. I opened the folder on my phone. Screenshots, messages, proof. My finger hovered. Then I closed it. Because the truth was, I didn't need to destroy him to prove my worth, and I didn't want to become someone who needed vengeance to feel whole. That night, alone in my quiet apartment, I realized something terrifying and freeing at the same time. This was rock bottom, and nothing he did could hurt me more than what I'd already survived. I wasn't broken. I was empty, and emptiness, I learned, is a place where something new can begin. The shift didn't come with fireworks. It came quietly on an ordinary Tuesday morning when I realized I had gone an entire hour without thinking about him. I was walking Max in a small park near my apartment, watching the way sunlight filtered through the trees, noticing how my shoulders felt lighter than they had in weeks. It startled me, that brief sense of peace, and then it grounded me. I hadn't lost myself. I had been buried. Later that afternoon, Emma called me. "I think you should know what's happening," she said carefully. I braced myself. "My parents know everything now," she continued. "I showed them the messages, all of it." I exhaled slowly. "My mom cried," Emma said. "Not for him, for you. She said she can't believe she raised someone who treats love like leverage." Something in my chest loosened. "And Nathan?" I asked. "He's spiraling," she admitted. "His friends are backing away. The story he told isn't holding up. Too many inconsistencies." For the first time, I understood something clearly. I didn't need to correct the narrative. The truth was doing that on its own. A few days later, my lawyer called. Nathan had tried to pressure me into buying out his share of the condo, framing it as the mature solution. The attempt failed. His urgency revealed more than he intended. Without me, the payment strained him. Without my quiet stability, things were unraveling. That night, I sat alone with a glass of water, thinking about all the times I'd softened myself to make him comfortable, all the times I'd been understanding when what I needed was respect. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt clear. When Nathan finally asked to meet, I agreed. Not to reconcile, not to argue, but to close the door properly. We met in a public place. He looked tired, smaller somehow. I never meant to hurt you, he said quickly. I was confused. No, I replied gently. You were honest. Just not with me. He stared at the table. I lost something real, he admitted. You chose to, I said. And in that moment, I realized I no longer needed anything from him. Not closure, not validation, not apologies. I stood up. I hope you figure out why you treat people this way, I said, but it won't be with me. Walking away this time felt different. It felt final. I wasn't reclaiming my power loudly. I wasn't proving anything. I was simply no longer available for someone who saw love as temporary. The fallout didn't explode all at once. It unraveled slowly, the way lies always do when they no longer have someone holding them together. Within days of our last conversation, the version of events Nathan had been telling people began to collapse under its own weight. Stories changed. Timelines didn't line up. People started asking questions he couldn't answer without contradicting himself. Emma kept me updated, not out of gossip, but because she knew silence used to be the space where I imagined the worst. My parents aren't speaking to him much, she told me one evening. They're disappointed, not angry, disappointed. I knew that hurt him more than yelling ever could. Friends who once praised his charm began creating distance. Invitations slowed, texts went unanswered. The admiration he relied on so heavily dried up when people realized the man who spoke about loyalty and ambition treated his own fiancée like a placeholder. The woman from work disappeared quickly. Once the secrecy was gone, so was the excitement. Apparently, she wasn't interested in a man whose engagement had imploded so publicly. Emma told me she transferred teams shortly after. The condo situation turned ugly, but predictable. Nathan couldn't afford it alone. He tried to negotiate, to rush decisions, to pressure me emotionally through third parties. My lawyer shut it all down. There would be no shortcuts, no manipulation. For the first time in our relationship, he had no leverage. I moved through my days quietly. I didn't post anything. I didn't explain myself. I let people believe whatever version they wanted, because the people who mattered already knew the truth. When Nathan's mother finally called me, her voice cracked. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't raise him to treat someone like that. I thanked her, genuinely, and then I let the call end. That was the pattern of this phase. Conversations closing, doors shutting, loose ends tying themselves without my involvement. I wasn't chasing peace anymore. I was living in it. Max adjusted beautifully. New park, new routine, new energy. Sometimes I thought he felt the shift before I did. One evening, as I unpacked the last box in my apartment, I realized something that surprised me. I didn't miss him. I missed who I thought he was. And once I separated those two truths, everything else became easy. 6 weeks after I walked out, I woke up one morning and realized the weight was gone. Not completely. Healing doesn't work like that, but enough that I could breathe without bracing myself first. My apartment felt like mine. Not temporary, not borrowed, mine. Max stretched beside me, sunlight spilling across the floor, and for the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel like something I had to defend. I had learned something important through all of this. Love isn't proven by how long you stay quiet. Commitment isn't measured by how much disrespect you tolerate. And stability should never come at the cost of your dignity. People asked why I didn't fight harder, why I didn't try counseling, why I didn't give him another chance. The answer was simple, even if it took time to accept. You can't fix someone who doesn't think they're broken. Nathan didn't see his behavior as betrayal. He saw it as strategy, and I refused to be anyone's contingency plan. Walking away wasn't weakness, it was clarity. I didn't scream. I didn't destroy him. I didn't need revenge. I chose myself quietly, deliberately, and without apology. If there's a lesson I carry now, it's this. When someone tells you, or shows you, that you're temporary, believe them the first time. Not so you can prove them wrong, but so you can step into a life where you are chosen fully. I don't know what comes next. I'm not rushing to replace what I lost. I'm rebuilding something stronger. Myself. And this time, nothing about me is temporary.